Pursuant to council rules, one motion non-debatable will approve the recommendation noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action. Such items removed from the consent agenda shall be considered immediately following, and I'm sorry, I have to approve tonight's agenda. So I tell you, I look down and I start reading. All right. Next, is there anything that staff would like to adjust with tonight's agenda?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just one adjustment to tonight's agenda. It's for other business item 11A, the voucher disbursement report. The council received an email with this report earlier, and there's a printed copy tonight in front of you for viewing, and that's going to be the one addition from staff for tonight's agenda.
Excellent. Thank you. Council, anything that you'd like to move around on tonight's agenda? All right.
Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. Agenda approved. Now, we move on to the consent agenda. Pursuant to council rules, one motion, non-debatable, will approve the recommendation noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action. Such items removed from the consent agenda shall be considered immediately following the approval of the balance of the consent agenda. Staff, anything to say on the consent agenda? All right, council? Anything you'd like to remove from tonight's agenda?
Seeing none, I'll make a motion to...
Well, actually, I do. I have something.
Sorry.
Yeah. I would like to pull item B, the investment reports. So, anything else?
No.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda without item B.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. All right. That item has been pulled. I pulled the investment report because I thought it would be good to take a minute to highlight what that report means for taxpayers. Tim, would you just kind of explain the investment report for folks who might be listening or might look at the minutes at a later time, just to explain the importance, like just why we're doing this and what that means to taxpayers?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Appreciate you pulling this off. So for those maybe watching at home, the City Council quarterly will approve an investment report, and really it's a call it a high-level summary. It does include some detail, really a look back through the most recent quarter net position of what we consider investments. Strategy includes, of course, run through the finance department to utilize assets that we have in a few different areas. Over the years, we've largely looked at investing in things like municipal bonds, treasuries, and certificates of deposit. These are traditionally low risk, so not something that nets the city huge sums of money, but a significant amount that we do invest in a strategy and in a way in that not for these to be fluid, but keeps us in a position that we do net some dollars. At the end of the year, or I should back up, really twice a year, Council gets a thorough look at this type of a thing. One through your annual audit. Typically we do that about June-ish. And then of course as we review the annual budget settings, we get into the end of the year. So on that second page after the memo here, it does walk through again your position. Now a couple things to call out on here. There are some current investments, so if you think in terms of, again, just a CD that you might invest in at your local bank would be maybe recognized as an unrealized loss, right? So if you invested in a 9-month position and you're on month 2, the current valuation might be a little less. So while this does provide a snapshot in time, maybe doesn't provide a realized position, again, with the intent of not being fluid funds. Beyond what you have on here, a specific call out, the City Council did go ahead and improve an investment strategy to invest with the State Board of Investment, or SBI. That was just here a couple of years ago. That statute was actually updated with the assistance of former Mayor Blonigan to allow cities of our size and credit rating to be able to invest in that strategy. A simple investment of $100,000 has net, $27,000, and 64 to be specific. So again, a realized return on that type of dollar. Again, this report is intended to call out, again, a snapshot in time. City staff is constantly looking at opportunities from everything that we've included here to overnight sweep accounts. So if, for example, we've got a cash position that maybe sits in a money market or a different type of account that would allow us to, in non-operating hours, put that into a sweep account overnight. Again, it's not going to net, an earth-shattering amount, but continues to build up over time. So staff utilizes those types of strategies to ensure that any assets that we do have in town, again, continue to provide a net gain for the city and, to the mayor's point, the taxpayers. So beyond that, if there are specifics or other items that I can respond to, I'd be happy to.
I do have a question. With the investment that we made in the state, what was it called? The State Board of Investment, thank you. It was $100,000. Then how do we recoup the gains on that? Is that an annual thing, or has it got to come to maturity after 5 years, or what's the strategy there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So again, this is a relatively new item. Really, we're about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into. The strategy has been to reinvest into that SBI account. Way to think about it is maybe a very similar type of gain, including penalty for withdrawal, to like an individual retirement account. So there is an opportunity to utilize some of those funds to maybe offset future levies. But again, the city council does adopt an investment strategy, and that does include both a floor and a ceiling on the SBI. Again, with it being a relatively new item, we were very specific and granular on that one. But that's a good call out as an opportunity, in the future may present itself again for maybe cashing in a piece. We could get you what the numbers for, call it a penalty. There would be a fee to remove those types of funds. But more direct to your specific question, currently we just continue to reinvest in that fund.
But at the end of the day, it's not a vehicle for the city to make money for the city. It's a vehicle for the city to make money, but it offsets the burden on residents to it, however, be it small degree, but to a degree, right? So, great. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate you putting the time on that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about that item? Okay, awesome. Well, is there a motion?
I'll approve the motion to acknowledge the investment report for the quarter ended March 2026. Hold on.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. All right. Thank you for indulging me. All right. Next on the agenda, presentations. Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
In a hurry tonight, apparently. All right. So what did we approve tonight in the consent agenda? And thank you, Jason. So we approved City Council meeting minutes from April 7th, 2026. We approved the investment report. We approved submission of a Metropolitan Council water efficiency grant application. We approved Robbinsdale Wine and Spirits monthly financial statements for February and March 2026. We approved the Deputy Registrar's monthly financial statements for February. We approved the Deputy Registrar's monthly financial statements for March as well. We had the appointment of an alternate commissioner to the Bassett Creek Watershed Commission. We approved a Hennepin County Youth Activities Grant application. We approved Miller Concessions at Hy-Vee. We approved antenna lease amendments with T-Mobile for 3310 Oakdale Avenue North. We approved credit card charges and payments. We authorized the city manager to execute a license agreement with the Birdhouse Restaurant. And approved some licenses tonight, as well as we received the Sustainability Committee meeting minutes from March 18th, 2026. All right, now let's move on to presentations in Arbor Day Proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'll give just a brief intro to this item. As urban forestry and trees have been important and a council priority, and we want to recognize that as a council and as staff, and certainly residents care about it too. And as we enter to spring, it's a perfect time for this proclamation to come in front of you. Like I said, it's been a priority to keep our trees, replace our trees, and clean up the parks and the green space that we do have in here. And so we wanted to get this in front of council so we can not only in tandem with our Arbor Day celebration, but also have the council recognize this formally. And so tonight we're asking you to just make a motion to proclaim April 25th, 2026 as Arbor Day in the city of Robbinsdale.
Excellent. Any questions or a motion? Someone want to make a motion to proclaim April 25th as Arbor Day in Robbinsdale?
I will be happy to make that motion. Before I do, would staff be willing to share details about our Arbor Day celebration?
Well, this year it's on the Saturday at 9:30. It's at Manor Park. So there'll be, your city forester is here also, and will be there, so if he can certainly probably speak to it more. But there'll be like a cleanup at the park, and then also I think like giving away of seeds. Is that correct, Stefan? Seedlings.
Nice.
Yep. So.
Wonderful, thank you. And I can attest the Arbor Day celebration is a very good time, and definitely encourage folks to attend. But with that, I will be happy to make a motion to adopt the proclamation for Arbor Day, declaring Sunday, April 25th as Arbor Day in the city of Robbinsdale, county of Hennepin, state of Minnesota.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. All right. Arbor Day it is. Moving on, we've got Robbinsdale Forestry and Natural Resources Annual Report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Stefan Papis. I am the Forester Natural Resources Specialist for the City of Robbinsdale, and I'm here to present the annual Forestry Natural Resources Report for 2025. So to get things started, here we go. So still the prime topic on most folks' mind is emerald ash borer when they think of urban forestry and canopy landscape trees. And it's still a big deal. We first discovered it in Robbinsdale in April 2018. That hasn't changed, but what has changed now is that pretty much any untreated ash tree in Robbinsdale is most likely infested with emerald ash borer, trees that are untreated. If you drive around town, you'll see many private trees that have extensive woodpecker damage from the insect. The woodpeckers go after the trees to find the larvae under the bark. In general, as a kind of a standard metric, if more than 30% of the tree has shown dieback, it's kind of too late to treat it, in which case that makes removal the only management option. We have been doing a lot of treatments, which I'll get to shortly, but all those treatments have kind of created a degree of herd immunity over the years that have delayed the EAB death curve, so to speak. But at some point, all the untreated trees are found by this insect. They'll find them just because native ash trees do not have any built-in defense mechanisms or immunity to emerald ash borer, being that it's a non-native insect. In terms of how we manage private ash trees that have been killed by EAB, usually unless it's growing within about 10 feet of a right-of-way along a high-traffic corridor, or if it's a real issue between two neighboring properties where it's a direct safety hazard, and obviously die from EAB, we generally don't get involved in those kinds of disputes. And people have been taking them down as time goes on when they see that the tree is losing its bark and it's dead. So we've only had to really intervene once in terms of a forced removal for a neighbor ash. So that's an ongoing battle or a challenge, but is what it is. And on the right, you can see what we call a window of emerald ash borer feeding. They have the serpentine-style gallery that, when it gets overwhelmed, it just completely cuts off the flow of nutrients and water from the roots to the canopy, and that's what starves the tree from the top down. This is just a quick rundown on the life cycle of emerald ash borer. Female ash borers will lay eggs on the bark of an ash tree, up to 40 to 70 eggs, and then the larvae bore into the trunk, both into the trunk. They'll also, like I said, disrupt the flow of water and nutrients between the bark and the wood. And then as the larvae mature, they chew a D-shaped exit hole out of the bark, and then adults will fly, seek out new trees that still have living cambium, living canopy to them, and then they'll just start the process all over again. So for our public ash tree management that we undertake, we treat all the healthy public ash trees on a 3-year rotation throughout the city. We began doing this in 2016. So far, it's essentially 100% effective. We have not lost one tree due to emerald ash borer. I use an insecticide called Triage R10, which is more or less industry standard for injections. It's called emamectin benzoate is the active ingredient. And there's a machine called a quick jet air machine, not to be an advertisement for ArborJet, but that, again, is a very common tool for getting this insecticide into the physiology of ash trees. Last year, I treated 142 ash. The largest diameter was 42 inches, which is huge by ash standards. I treated one as small as 10 inches, but the average was 21 or 22 inches. That was the average diameter. That diameter has gone up over the years as we're not skewing the ash population down by planting new ash trees. Obviously, nobody is doing that, and you can't even get them in the nursery because of emerald ash borer. So the average diameter every year of the ash trees I treat and that we have in our city is going up. I only skipped 2 ash trees that were in severe decline last year, and again, unrelated to emerald ash borer. One was an old construction damage from a street project. I don't recall the other one. And all the city ash trees that are treated are stamped with a small blue aluminum tag with the letters RF, Robbinsdale Forestry, and the last year treated. This year I'll treat up to 207 ash trees on my list. It might be 200 if there's 7, say, that don't look like they're all that healthy, but again, it'd be for other reasons. I'm still using insecticide that was paid for by a 2022 Managing Ash Trees for EAB Minnesota DNR grant, and those materials will still likely last into 2028. And I did some quick math this afternoon that based on current prices, if we were to actually remove all these trees that I have on the treatment docket for this year, that amount to over $200,000 if you include both the removals and the stump grinding. And here I'm using insecticide that the state grant basically paid for us. So, the savings in city fund taxpayer dollars to keep these trees alive using grant money and in-house labor is astounding. It's one of my favorite, most proudest success stories with the preservation of ash canopy. And the photo on the lower right shows the quick jet air that you basically drill a hole in the lower part of the tree. Diameter of the tree divided by 2 tells you how many injection sites there are. And then the tree itself sucks up all the insecticide. And the photo above just shows an advanced infestation. So moving on to pruning, we do a lot of that. Here's a quick short video I took of a couple of our contract arborists doing their thing, actually pruning a couple of ash trees, probably dead wood. So we do a lot of structural pruning every winter or every year. Usually in the winter, that's the best time to do it. We have a system that I've kind of named zone-based structural tree pruning. We've divided the city up into 6 different pruning zones. And the goal with that is to prune every tree in the assigned zone during the tree dormant period, which is any time from November through April. Last year, we're kind of late on the game on that. We were doing most of our pruning in March and April. But part of that deal is dependent upon contractor availability. We almost finished up Zone 5, which is the central corridor between West Broadway and 81 down to 26th. But then we got notice of a DNR grant that's in the process that would actually help us finish that area. So we're kind of waiting on finishing that. So then we restarted this Zone 1 this past winter. which will reattack come the next dormant season. This is all pending finalization of this particular grant from the DNR that we got an award for. All the work is performed within the current ANSI A300 standards, which is pruning standards that most folks abide by. And we do a full prune on all our trees, not just clearance pruning or deadwood removal, and I'll speak a little bit on that in a moment. We do emphasize our contractors have rope and saddle climbing so that they can access all the interior parts of the tree versus just the outer parts of the tree. Some trees that are more dense canopied, you can't really access through a lift or a bucket truck. So that's why the rope and saddle is very useful for doing a full structural prune. Usually most of our crews are just a crew of 2 climbers, and then just for safety they need 1 ground worker, and generally no chipper. They haul the material away. And where applicable, I'll send out pruning notification letters to residents who have an adjacent tree just to let them know we're going to be pruning this tree, no cost to you, but also asking if they could not have cars next to the trees when we're going to be in that area. So some of the nitty-gritty of our tree pruning goals and objectives. Obviously, the primary objective is clearance over streets and sidewalks, roughly about 10 feet over sidewalks and 16 to 20 for roadside vehicles. The second main objective, hazard mitigation. So we're basically practical removal of all dead wood, larger than 2 inches in diameter, smaller if possible. Removal of defective, cracked, damaged limbs, large rubbing limbs. And then what differentiates what we do with a lot of other folks is that with the structural pruning, as we usually will select a single dominant leader, even in mature trees, and then we'll try to subordinate through pruning all the codominant leaders through a system of reduction cuts. Now that takes a lot of time, that does require climbing, but I feel like that is the best management strategy for long-term tree health, is to keep some of these codominant stems in check. The reason why we have more codominant stems is because a lot of these landscape trees are grown out in the open. They have light on all sides. They're not exactly forest-grown trees where they're going to grow up and not have large codominant or lateral limbs. So this is a little bit of pruning science, but this is best done through these reduction cuts where you take the larger of 2 stems at a union. Sometimes that can look awkward, but in the long run, it's best for the tree and you get more bang for your buck for 1 pruning cut. And I practice that myself on smaller trees that I can reach from the ground, especially fast-growing trees such as elms that I've planted around in boulevards. And in general, pruning objectives, the specifications for this is to keep the majority of the cuts we make reduction in nature and shorten instead of removing long lateral limbs, because when you just remove limbs, you create these long limbs that are called lion's tailing, and that's kind of a bad practice. We have these long lever arms more prone to storm damage. We have all the weight on the very end from a bunch of removing all the smaller limbs along a given limb versus shortening them and reducing the chance for them, basically bringing them down more or less. And also, you don't want to have cuts larger than 3 inches unless you can help it, unless you're removing a broken stub, say from a catastrophic storm. Heavy pruning dose on competing upright leaders and minimal pruning dose on that identified central leader that myself and our contract foreman will look at ahead of time as we walk the blocks or look at trees. So we have a very proactive program on this, and I think the evidence has shown that we have a lot less routine storm damage since we started this kind of intensive pruning, and also fewer call-out events. Of course, you can't prevent, when we get 80-mile-an-hour straight-line winds, you're going to have issues, but we haven't had very many catastrophic tree failures since we really began this program, so that's another thing that we're proud of. Currently, to do all this work, we have 2 separate tree contracts to do a lot of this. I do a lot of the smaller trees myself, but we have a separate pruning contract and removal contract. Currently, the pruning contract is held by Brad Tree. We keep these separate just because each type of activity has different goals or technical standards. And for pruning, it's on an hourly time and materials-based approach, mainly because every tree is going to be different. It might need different dosage of pruning, different dosage of time to accomplish our goals. Whereas with removals, it's kind of obvious. Here's a tree that's 20 inches in diameter. You can kind of go off of a per-inch diameter, and then the end result is the tree's gone. So it's easier to do a unit cost on removals, which is what we do. The pruning contract has been extended through 2027, and on occasion we do use a second pruning contractor, Blue Ribbon Pruning. They're a local contractor, mainly just for single deadwood removal jobs where it doesn't have to be a large production or anything like that. Currently, for our removals, which certainly arguably can be a big part of what we do with storm cleanup, and that is precision landscape and tree. Again, like I mentioned, that's a unit cost program based on tree diameter classes, usually in multiples of 5, and that contract runs through the end of this year. We'll probably see if they're interested in re-upping for next year. These are some of the photos of past removal work and pruning work, a spider lift, a large leaning cottonwood removal, and the one on the far right was a diseased elm that was unfortunately a front yard disease tree, but it succumbed to Dutch elm disease. Moving on to native prairie rain garden management activities. Actually, I think I have a video here that shows some of that. We annually coordinate these activities with prairie restorations to manage a whole slew of different prairies, rain gardens, and other public native plantings we have around the city. We've been doing this for many years now, but each year is a little bit different in terms of what gets done where. This year, last year we burned all the sites, but this year anyway, just because we did it this month, prescribed burns included 3 of the 4 parks we have with prairie areas, which included Humphrey, Sohaki, and Milky. And we also have 7 or 8 different rain gardens that we also burn as well, which are planted with native plants. We also did burn to kind of renew the vegetation in Lakeview detention ponds. There's a strip of prairie along Railroad Avenue north of Triangle Park. And we also do some dormant mows where applicable to keep the cost down a little bit, but also dormant mows can help with forb germination or wildflower germination the year after. So this year we dormant mowed Hollingsworth Park, which is the area along Crystal Lake facing southwest, and then also the Lee Park Clearwell, which is a recent installation. We also have a small native prairie near the hospital at Manor Park splash pad, but we normally mow that because it's hard to control the smoke and it's in the shadow of the hospital. After we do all the spring maintenance work, we have what are called integrated plant management visits, 3 visits per season in general, and that's usually just until spot herbicide treatments, hand weeding, and also which controls exotic invasive species. And then last year, we were awarded a grant from the DNR to actually conduct all this work through 2028, June 30th, and as a generous $50,000 award. So most of the work now through 2028 is actually being paid for by a grant that we got from the DNR. So now, again, Prairie Restoration does all the work, but I more or less manage the program, budget for it, do all the kind of the nitty-gritty of that, and could document it and kind of specify what I like to see done, along with other engineering staff where applicable. And again, that was Sohaki Park last year in a certain remnant area of the park that has some pretty unique species that are kind of uncommon around town elsewhere. We were going to do increased area of more prairie landscaping here at City Hall, and that was a proposal brought forth by the Sustainability Committee. It was to create a more lower maintenance bird pollinator friendly landscape. We had some conversations with Prairie Restoration on how to implement that this past winter. Both on the implementation feasibility and such a high-use visible location, also plant establishment maintenance timelines, but this project more or less hinged on on application for that same grant that we got last year, the Conservation Partners Legacy Grant through the DNR, specifically their expedited conservation projects round 4. Unfortunately, we were notified last week that we were not selected for the grant. It was considered facilities development. And the DNR, when we inquired about, should we apply to round 5, because there's 5 rounds within this particular grant, we were advised that we should not reapply, just based on that facilities development hang up. So for now, it's on hold. However, we are discussing the next steps internally, but I think that we will probably likely be able to pursue a smaller version of that project, not the whole grand City Hall complex, but there are a couple areas maybe farther down by the road where we can restore, or not so much restore, but convert turf grass to native landscaping. But again, we're in the early stages of discussing that. We'd use CIP funding. The photo on the lower right is one that Prairie Restoration told us about from a similar project they did at the Carver County Government Center, which was a mix of forbs and sedges. And then the upper photo just shows to me, the highly scenic inflorescent seedhead of big bluestem, which is the most common tall grass prairie species you'll find in any kind of prairie. Now, you wouldn't probably have much big bluestem here because it can get to about 6 feet tall, but that's the primary component of a lot of prairie areas. Moving on to similar noxious weeds, invasive species, there's a stand of Japanese knotweed in the northwest corner of Humphrey Park that I aggressively target. I cut a bunch of stems last September. That's a very aggressive plant. Even if you leave a stem lying around, it can take root and form a new infestation pocket. I'll revisit that this summer. We do control buckthorn. We get a lot of assistance from our Sentence to Serve crews. This is a long-term project. Part of that is replanting after the buckthorn is taken out. We partnered with Hennepin County last year. They planted 1,200 seedlings in buckthorn-removed areas of Sohaki Park using 20 different understory species, including elderberry, ironwood, red oak, species that can tolerate part shade and also can leaf out earlier, which can shade areas of buckthorn regeneration. That was all provided by Hennepin County. And the photo on top shows an area where we used forestry mulcher last winter to take out some almost quarter-century-old buckthorns along Major Avenue that were just producing berries left and right. So we did get a chance to mow down some buckthorn too, not using in-house. Another menace to woodland understories is garlic mustard, an advanced infestation you can see on the lower right. But the main area where that is in Robbinsdale is in Sohaki Park, and I've been pulling that since 2016. The goal is to basically pull the second-year plants when they burst to about 3 feet tall. And since multiple years of thorough pulling, I've pretty much exhausted the seed source. Last year I went down there. I didn't see much garlic mustard at all. So we've pretty much successfully for now eradicated a lot of those plants. And that's all mechanical control, no herbicide with that species. It's all pretty much just labor. Moving on to shade tree disease insect and control. Dutch elm disease has been an ongoing battle since the 70s, but nowadays there just aren't very many large mature elms left that date back before that epidemic of Dutch elm disease. I scout the city every year for Dutch elm disease and oak wilt. Found 4 private elm trees and 1 public elm tree. Last year, 3 of the 4 elms were proactively removed by the property owner, and 3 of those were over 30 inches in diameter. And then there was a 4th that was a forced removal, but the house was more or less abandoned, but it was still considered forced. I do look for oak wilt, although that's really more of an issue where you have contiguous oak woodlands, like on the Anoka Stand Plain. I've only seen one oak wilt pocket since I've been here, so it's really not common in areas such as Robbinsdale, but no new finds last year. And another challenging insect that does attack a lot of oaks, especially with stressors that they undergo, is two-line chestnut borer. I treated a handful of oaks using the same materials I use for emerald ash borer because they're in the same family of insects, and that should clean the trees out of two-line chestnut borer. Again, I treated public large bur oak trees. I did not do any treatments last year. I might do some this year, depends on how they look. But the photo on the lower right just shows some of the tip dieback you can expect with two-line chestnut borer. And the photo on the left side was a front yard removal of a diseased elm taken last year. And then the one on the top is a couple years ago, but that sadly was another large tree that was probably planted right around post-World War II and succumbed to DED. We do a lot of tree planting, and we use a system called a gravel bed nursery barrow tree planting system. We've been using that since 2015. Nothing fancy about it. It's just a bed of irrigated pea gravel about 15 inches deep and anywhere from 14 feet wide to 60 feet long. What that does is it allows for temporary storage of barrow trees, which are relatively cheap from the nursery, at least compared to container or bald and burlap trees. And it also allows for staggered, non-frantic, so to speak, barrow tree planting. If you get barrow trees, normally you have to plant them before they leaf out. Here you can put them in gravel and just not only have them all summer long, but plant at a staggered timeline even until the ground freezes. And the added benefit of that as I've mentioned in the past, is that you get oftentimes on a lot of species a very fibrous root system that aids in transplant success and reduces the transplant shock. Not all species produce really fibrous roots like you see in the lower right, but a lot of them do. And the one in the lower right is unique. That was actually an oak. And oak are usually considered not that great for gravel beds in terms of fibrous roots. That's a unique case. We usually plant out all the trees by late May, and then we get new trees delivered the week of Memorial Day, and then the whole process starts over again. Last fall, we planted out 104 trees of about 25 different species or cultivars. The one thing I do stress is no more maples, both for myself and if residents ask what should I plant, I always try to steer them away from maples because they're so overplanted in the landscape. They're susceptible to drought. There's just too many. There's a lot of different species to choose from. And moving forward, as previous years, I basically select open boulevards, rights of way to replant. Normally, if there's an open spot, it means there was an elm tree there that was removed at some point, but because trees were expensive many years ago in terms of the system they were using, contractors, balled and burlap, they just was not replanted. Obviously, if I get a request from a resident, that goes to the top of my list to replant. But goal is to just keep repopulating gaps in the canopy or in areas following street reconstruction projects, of which we have quite a few. To further our private reforestation initiatives, we have partnered with Tree Trust. We've been doing that since fall of 2023. Tree Trust is a pro at managing community-wide tree sales, and the goal is to pretty much just foster and encourage private tree replacement. Obviously for long diseased elms or ash trees that are gone or trees that died from girdling roots or storm damage, what have you. Last year we sold, and again, this is just to residents, not to us, 71 trees total, majority in spring. This spring we have 100 available, 9 different species. Again, no maples, trying to steer people away from that, but we do have a nice array of other species. And I would encourage folks, anybody watching or who will watch, to consider oaks or coffee tree or river birch. Those are still underrepresented in the landscape, and oaks provide the most amount of benefit to the habitat, to the landscape habitat, pound for pound. Local pickup, that's a big plus for this. You don't have to drive to a nursery and then figure out how to haul the tree back. We have that at Public Works. These are relatively easy to handle. Number 10 container size, $50 each. And each tree comes with a bag of mulch. And these are just a couple of photos from the tree staging that we've done in the past. So it's a great deal. The other thing we started last year, which was a major hit, was Minnesota Native Landscapes has a program called their Community Habitat Partnership Initiative, where they grow native plants and they sell them to cities or watershed districts or counties at a discounted wholesale price. And I thought, well, that's a cool thing. It's a way of getting, just like with trees, getting more native plants in the landscape, especially since so many of these native plant nurseries are on the outskirts of town that a lot of people might not know about, Otsego, Scandia, Hastings, whereas here we can provide a local pickup for that too. So up to 10 other cities are partnering now with MNL, Minnesota Native Landscapes, and to do this program. And the only hard cost to the city is a delivery, and that program easily paid for itself last year. Highly popular. Each kit has 36 live native plants. Last year we sold 267 kits, which was beyond my wild expectations going into this. It was amazing, successful program that we hosted for the first year ever. This year, same deal, same price. We are offering 7 different landscape kit teams, though. The only new one is the Songbird Special, which has proven to be pretty popular. Species that, for whatever reason, they provide more habitat for like caterpillars that birds then feed on, or thicker stem species where birds will perch on, and so forth. There's no purchase limit. You can mix and match themes. Again, $60 each. The sale is open until the 8th of May, and then pick up the Saturday will be on Saturday the 16th, same place as last year at Lee Park, which we chose because it's a centralized location. And the plants are, they're not like little seedlings. They're very vigorous plant stock for mid-May, as you can see in the 2 photos on the left. We've been working on some code changes to city code and updates over the winter, mainly the forestry code, just updating older language, and those are sections 820, 825, and 835. Basically clarifying certain prohibited trees. It's just kind of out of date, so we're updating that. Abatements, other items. It would be the first major update since 2017. To my knowledge, that's in the process of being shown to the being approved by the Planning Commission. I'm also working with staff on additions to city code language about native plants and private landscapes. I'm working on that along with engineering and with code enforcement. A couple different sections. Adding definitions includes allowance for bee-friendly lawns. It does reference a state statute from 2023 that protects the preservation of maintained native landscapes in charter cities. The key word there is maintained. That doesn't mean you can just not mow or not do anything and you're protected under that. So these code updates do allow for a better enforcement authority for our staff on enforcing standards to overgrown properties that cannot just hide behind the native landscape banner if they're not doing any work. So it does take effort, but we're adding language, especially now that we're pushing these plants into native landscapes. We felt it's appropriate to now update city code language with that. The photo on the right just shows a very common prairie plant called purple prairie clover. It's one of the earlier flowers in June, very common in tallgrass prairies. A couple other items, clean up JS-based inventory and plant inventories. We have inventory of all our public trees. That's over 6,400. We have a Green Corps member this year who came on board last fall. She's been updating our park trees very nicely. The diameters had not been updated since 2020. She uses this, and I use also an app called Field Maps. There's a public view version of this inventory, and it's live. In other words, it's linked to the actual inventory. As I make changes 5 minutes later, you'll see that change reflected on the public view version. We also maintain an in-house inventory of known private native prairie plantings, and that's mostly for code enforcement staff as they look around for long grass enforcement during the summertime. Screenshot there just shows an ArcGIS Pro screen, and Pro is the de facto software program that professionals use to manage inventories, at least a lot of folks. County 81, as y'all probably know, is planted in alternative landscaping, mostly little blue stem. The county installed that. It was handed over to us to maintain on 1st of July 2022. Most of the medians are little blue stem. There's some ornamental plants in the median noses. This is all maintained by Minnesota Native Landscapes. The work is coordinated with Crystal and Brooklyn Park since we all share that corridor. We do provide rolling traffic control. I more or less kind of communicate with MNL on the work to be done, and then keep track on that. And the annual tasks are similar to what Prairie Restoration does with all our own sites: spring cleanup, dormant mowing, no prescribed burn there, but dormant mowing, and then 3 separate visits during the summertime to control unwanted species. So as was touched on a little bit ago, I'll talk on Arbor Day here, but Tree City USA last year, with 47th year, Robbinsdale earned this distinction from the Arbor Day Foundation. This year, 25th of April, Saturday, will be our annual celebration at Manor Park. 2015 was the last year that it was held there. It'll be near the southwest corner of the tennis court. That's where we selected to plant a tree. I'll have over 40 tree seedlings to be given away. I'll have information handouts available, and the interactive Popular Magic is in the Roots display we'll have on site for the event. And that shows in the photo in the upper right, that display we built that shows interactively just how long native plant roots are compared to your average turf grass, which is only a few inches long when you mow it all the time. But species like lead plant and little blue stem and all those, their roots go down as much as 5 feet. And why is that important? Well, because that allows more stormwater infiltration, it prevents runoff. So there's all sorts of benefits to that, let alone the pollinator and the wildlife habitat that depends on that. And that was custom built by staff in-house, so we're proud of that creation. I do manage the adopted park groups, we're co-managed with Recreation, but I sent out all the renewal info to all the 16 groups back in March. We do ask groups to undertake 3 pickups a year. We do provide free cleanup supplies for those that are interested. We also have an arsenal of trash grabbers available for rent here at City Hall. And we have a simple online form that we provide for reporting trash pickups if need be. And the photo on the lower right is just a group photo from last year's celebration that was at Norma Kelly Park. And with that, I'll pause, or that concludes my report. If there's any other questions, and I guess there was a video there, but yeah, that concludes my report.
Thanks, Stefan. I'm sure there's comments and questions. I've got a few, but before I pass the microphone to my peers, I want to just kind of go back to the emerald ash borer and what you did to elongate the insecticide that was used, and then highlight the contrast about what's going on in other cities around us. So other cities, let's just start there. I think New Hope's got a bunch of trees that they're processing right now to the tune of probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Crystal had this happen to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. You had the foresight to take what you were given and stretch that, and by the way, stretch the Robbinsdale taxpayers' dollars and save the taxpayers' dollars and save all of those trees in Robbinsdale. I mean, if there was like the tree equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, I feel like you earned it right there. And that's incredible. And I don't think that story gets sung enough. And that's just such a cool story about the work that you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really, 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 really impressed by that.
Whenever I see an ashtray, it's like, wow, it's cool that we kept that alive, right, with my treatments. And it's just like as if there was no emerald ash borer, and you go to other cities and you just see ash trees that are crumbling.
Yeah.
The contrast is amazing.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's sad to see a tree go down because it's this symbol of durability and, you know, a place to take rest. And when you see it, I almost feel like you're losing a person when the tree goes down. So thanks, Stefan. I'm going to step back from the microphone here. And does anybody else have any comments or questions that they'd like to ask? This Councilmember Parisian.
Thank you. Thanks, Stefan. I always enjoy your presentations. I learn something new every year, and you do a lot. And so I want to echo the appreciation for all of your efforts and all of your expertise and your willingness to share your expertise with the city. We're very, very fortunate to have you on our staff and in our community. My question is, with your level of knowledge of Robbinsdale's forestry and our tree collection, if you will, you probably see a lot of homeowners' trees, so the trees that are not managed or owned by the city. And my question is, what is something that you think that homeowners might be missing with the trees that are on their property that folks can take your advice?
Councilmember Parisian, I think they might be missing the importance of regular structural pruning, depending on the tree species, its age, where it is in life. But I guess I see this, I guess the sense that most people think of pruning, they just think of clearance and trimming them up, so to speak, to kind of borrow a common phrase, whereas that, especially with a lot of these fast-growing trees that people like, such as hybrid maples, autumn blaze maples, elms, they need to really keep up on the pruning, and not just the pruning, but the structural pruning or subordination cuts, like I talked about, where you try to mimic more of a forest-grown tree in a sea of light. So again, it depends on the tree. If we're talking a mature old silver maple that has dead wood that you can't really form anymore, you can't really do much other than just ameliorate any kind of hazardous, then that's different. But for people planting new trees or relatively younger trees planted in the last 20, 30 years, I think structural full prune is the one thing that a lot of people might be missing, or just general intensive maintenance of trees. It's always fun to plant new trees and get them going, but if you're not planting in a forest where they're all competing for light to grow up as tall as they can and keep those side leaders in check, you can have a lot of catastrophic issues when you have a storm or a loading event. And like I said, with a lot of those trees that people want shade, they want it fast, and Well, that's great, but some species like the autumn blaze are so prone to having this upright branching and having included bark that you really need to keep up on that. And I just drive around town, I see autumn blaze or like new elm, and it's like these different trees that they really need to prune that. But I think a lot of tree people, they might not communicate that as well when they're trying to sell work. Whereas when a resident asks me, well, what should I do with it? I'll go in depth. I'll have my laser pointer out. I'll go in actually perhaps too much detail about what I would suggest to keep that tree structurally healthy, not just like watering it or not cutting the roots or anything. But I think that would, to answer your question, I think just the lack of maintenance, pruning, and like the structural maintenance, not just clearance, would how I would answer that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great answer. And as a follow-up, would like having a mature tree like that, is that something that people should be thinking about every few years or more often than that? What would you recommend?
Again, it depends on the species, but I would think at least once every 3 years.
Okay.
If it's an autumn blaze, once every year, which is a large order. It's a tall order, I know, because tree work is not cheap. I see the invoices, I pay them. It's not, it's not cheap, but yeah, if it's like a oak, then I would say maybe every 5 years. But if it's an autumn blaze or an elm, especially an elm, honestly, especially an elm, yeah, every year. Especially if it's a hybrid like American elm. I've seen a lot of failed American elms from tear-offs because they just grow too fast, and for some reason they just don't keep those lateral leads in check. And that's an ongoing, I don't want to say research project of mine, but kind of questioning the wisdom of planting elms anymore, not because of Dutch elm disease, but because of they grow too fast for their own good, unless you literally are keeping up on the pruning. And even then, what do you do when you get too tall for me to prune? We're not going to be pruning them every year as using a contractor. So, it just depends on species, but the faster growing, the more often you should prune it. That's pretty simple.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. And thank you again for the presentation and all your work.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
I'll just be really brief. Yes, thank you. Thanks again, as always. I learned something new as well. And this reminded me that you are accessible for our community to reach out to if they have questions ever, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I just want to make sure people know that, because I know when I was out campaigning and just meeting my neighbors and talking, that was something that came up a lot, was you were so willing to come out and talk to people about the process, and you're very knowledgeable. So just want to make sure that people know that you're available to support and help. So thank you.
Yep. Consulting arboriculture is one of my duties, and I enjoy it a lot. I like trying to answer people's questions without any kind of bias or any kind of like monetary gain in mind that usually can come from hiring or getting a company out. So it's just kind of my unfiltered opinion of what I think. So I enjoy doing that for residents.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Greenberg.
Yeah, I will echo everybody's sentiments and say thank you and amazing presentation. One of the things you brought up was just utilizing grant money that we have access to over the next several years. Are those the types of grants that, like, if it expires in 2028, that we would be able to apply again for another round? Or are those like kind of, that was like during a specific period and then once it's done, that's it?
Councilmember Greenberg, thank you for your compliments. For the Managing Ash for EAB grant, I don't think they're going to offer that one again. That was kind of a one-time deal when we were getting into the EAB death curve, and they probably looked at what we were doing and they thought, well, we should reward you for doing that. So and maybe on a state level they might again, like in 2027-8. So I can't speak to that one. The DNR one that we have, the CPL grant that we got last year, tried to get again this year for the City Hall project that was not successful. That's offered every year and in rounds of 5. And I think that's been offered for a number of years now. So that is a recurring grant window. But that's specific for habitat restoration and projects like that. So I could see going for another one of those in 2028 for what we're doing now with prairies, which again depends on what the situation is at that time. But and they actually they upped the maximum amount of funding with that grant actually after I got it, or for this year anyway. So to me, that could be a possibility again. We got a grant in 2020 through the county, and now it's to update our tree inventory. It was like Healthy Canopies grant, and the Hennepin County offers that on a regular basis. So for tree inventory updates, I could see going for that one again. That's about all I can think off the top of my head. But so some of these are recurring. I think the ash, though, that's kind of at some point that's just going to be kind of come and gone. But we'll have fewer ash by that time from other natural causes.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any questions? Yeah. Chris Aranda?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Stefan. Seriously, like I learn something new every time at city council meetings. But I think that this kind of work just really takes, an individual and a team of folks that really care about this sustainability and overall the impact that these trees have for us and our residents. So I just want to thank you for that, and I also want to thank you for shining kind of like some light to how residents here can kind of, be in the know of what's offered here in Robbinsdale, like the tree trust, tree sale. I'm glad that that's still a thing. And then the native plant kit sale, which is coming up here in May. So just thank you again for your time and presenting here.
Thank you.
And then I got two quick questions, and then I promise I'll let you go unless anybody else has any questions. So my first question is, the contractors that we use for tree removal and stump grinding, I'm assuming residents can contact them as well, correct? Okay. Is there any kind of special relationship for Robbinsdale residents with those contractors?
No, there is not. We do have an in-house, we do licensed tree contractors for general tree work, pruning, removal, stump grinding, and both of those companies are on that list, but there's no real, and people are free to contact them, and when people ask, well, who should I use? I can't make recommendations, but I do mention who we use for our work because it's public information, but there's no specific deal or because we have a removal contract with the city, we can remove your tree at a reduced rate. We don't have that program. I'm not aware of any other cities that do special rates for tree work, so to speak, if they have a contract with the city, but they do. There are cities that have special rate for tree injections like Emerald Ash Borer, but that's for cities that A, are treating their trees, which are few and far between, and B, are contracting it out. And I'll just say that Rainbow Tree Care seems to be a more common company locally that does a lot of that. They do treatments for the city, but then the city will provide that same contractor rate for their residents to try and encourage treatments. But that's about the only example I can think of where there's a resident contract rate with the city. And again, I thought about that, but since I'm doing all these myself in-house, we didn't really have that agreement, so it didn't really apply to us, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then last,
I should say we never really got a request to do something like that where we have a certain rate for work, but in the case of pruning, every tree is going to be different. It's not like they have a blanket rate for tree pruning like they would have for ash injections or Dutch elm disease elm injections, where you can go by, it's $7 per diameter inch, and that's the same across the board. Whereas with pruning, again, every tree is going to be different. Removals, you have backyard trees, you have trees along fences. It's hard to keep the same kind of cost for some challenging private trees versus just walk up, drill some holes, inject the insecticide, and you're done. There are far more variables with, I think, more heavy-duty tree work versus just injections, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was thinking about last summer when the storms came through and my neighborhood got hammered by the high winds, and I think you saw it too. And it's just like the tree contractor starts circling, and you start to wonder, well, who can you trust? But I need something now, and so it's good to know that we work with somebody and there's an established relationship. And I guess if all else fails, you want to go with somebody that you feel like you can trust. Probably if the city trusts them, you can too. So, all right. This is more of a comment than a question, but on the prairie restoration, disappointing news. Certainly understand and appreciate that we're working on grant dollars for that. I just wonder if there's a phased approach that we don't have to solve this now that we could take, or something to do some of that work, because I did key into that it would help reduce costs long term with lawn maintenance, I think, overall, because of the natural environment, and not somebody's not over there mowing, and so I felt like it was probably a good trade-off, but maybe there's a world where we can do like a phased approach, and maybe some volunteers can come out and help us plant that. But I'll just plant that seed. I don't expect anybody to solve that problem now, but if it warrants a discussion at a work session, I'll look to Tim to bring it up. So
Yeah, phased approach is kind of a good way of putting it. We might say do one section of the original overall plan that we're going to pursue, the area away from the building. But again, we're kind of in the early discussions. We're in the process of reaching out to the contractor for restoration to get us some proposal quotes for just those areas, because it's going to be different now that we're not going to get the grant. And they never separated those. Any potential new project without that grant now, that's a different world. So we kind of need updated information on what it would cost. It might be doable this year. We don't know.
Cool.
So we're just, that news is kind of hot off the presses. So.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's disappointing.
But no, we're not going to give up. We're going to try to pursue that. Might have to be a phased approach. Might have to look for other funding sources, although that's not a lot out there for that specific endeavor. But let's just keep at it.
Well, I trust you and this team here that you guys will pursue, and if there's a viable option, you'll find it. So thank you very much for your time. Well done.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to receive the Robbinsdale Forestry Natural Resources Annual Report.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. Received. Thanks again. All
Thank
right.
you. You're welcome.
Moving on to public hearings, there are none. Old business, there is none. New business, adopt goals and top priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'll give a brief introduction. My hope is Council will share some of their insight, experience, and their experience certainly with the session, and a few thoughts as we go forward here. For the courtesy of those maybe watching at home or not familiar with the process, the City Council and staff leadership annually go through what we call a top goals and priorities session, typically held towards the start of the year. Had a new council member join us, so we were maybe pushed a little bit behind, not dramatically, but adopting us here tonight following that. At an evening there late February, about 4.5 hours, again, all 5 council members. We had department directors, some manager level, and some other staff as well to help facilitate really good discussion as we map these out. This year being sort of a unique in a biennium, so to speak, in that last year we had a brand new group. So not that we started fresh or from scratch, but we were able to take a little bit of time looking back from the last 12 months with what was adopted in 2025, made some adjustments, some new items as we went forward. The draft version was reviewed at the work session last week. One small language tweak was suggested and is observed in your materials here tonight. But again, hoping that council will host a discussion on this before staff's recommendation that you motion to adopt your 2026 top priority goals.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, I'll start and I'll pass the mic again, but I thought it was, especially having been in this role for a year and just seeing how the city operates, engaging with residents, whether it be here, whether it be, in my inbox or out in the community as I mill about all the different places around Robbinsdale. I thought it was a really great session. It felt good for me that I was a little bit more grounded in the city, and I can't speak for my counterparts, so I'm sure they might say the same thing. But it was great to see what was important to council, but also the added layer of what was important to staff. And I said it in the goals and priorities session, and I'll say it here, that when staff started putting all their dots on certain goals, it's one of those things that you guys see stuff that we don't, right? Because you're in here, you are making the sausage and watching how it's made. We're just up here talking about it. So I thought it was an excellent session. Look forward to what comes of it and the progress that we make towards these goals and priorities. So, anyone else? Councilmember Parisian.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Council. Also, thanks to staff for helping to facilitate this now annual meeting to go over our top goals and priorities. I echo, I think it was a great session. I think it is really enlightening to get all the leadership from different areas of the city in one room. That's a really special opportunity, and very supportive of the goals that have been identified here. I would also just like to reiterate how much I appreciate the report cards that staff provides on a monthly basis. I think that is such a key piece to keeping the council informed on how we're making moves throughout the year towards these goals, and keeps the council helps keeps those goals top of mind on a regular basis for the council. So I would love to see that continue, and I have nothing more to add from there. So thank you.
Councilmember Caceres Aranda.
Yeah, thank you, Council and Mayor. I would say that the session was overall super productive, and I really like the facilitator that we had this time around. I think did a great job of doing a sort of round table and then doing the small group work, and facilitated group discussion was great. The one thing that I will say is, just looking over like the list here, everything looks good to me, and I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of not do like a monthly check-in or anything, but like a quarterly kind of check-in to see where we are on goals, especially some of these more like specific, like nuanced ones, because I know some are more general. But is there some sort of way that we did that last year, for example, or in past years?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Aranda, having not been with us last year, to Councilmember Parisian's comment, what I like to do typically your last Tuesday of the month, usually don't have a council meeting, but utilize as an opportunity where you don't get a completely free night, give you some materials to kind of go through and review. I think the point is well taken in that, well, maybe not a linear spectrum. There are some that are very actionable, that this is a thing that we can at some point check off the list. Some are far more philosophical. We want to adopt a strategy. We want to conduct business in this way. Some certainly fall in between. So updates throughout the year provided. Get those out monthly, typically at the end of the year. At the end of the month. Again, on that last Tuesday is always the goal.
Great, thank you. That helps. I don't have any other questions really, but thank you. Thank you, Tim.
There's no other questions or comments. Take a motion to adopt. Do you have a comment?
Nope,
Question?
no comment.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll see nothing else. The motion to adopt the 2026 top priority goals.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. Okay, goals and priorities adopted. Congratulations. Nice work. All right, new business, item B, authorize staff to issue RFP for cleaning services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Real brief on this one. As a professional service, this does fall under the guide that you are required to authorize staff to go forward in this process. We currently do utilize a service that does cleaning for 3 facilities here at City Hall, Public Safety, and at Public Works. From time to time we go through, we've been with the current company for a number of years, but again, as noted here, from time to time we go through and with that request for proposal process, utilize those that have done this in the area in similar situations, not just our municipal partners, but recognizing there may be some nuance, for example, going through certain types of security or background checks to work up at Public Safety. Operating hours can be a little bit funny. Typically we have them after hours, but for example, on Tuesday evenings, we have council meetings. So certainly not a one-for-one with maybe commercial cleaners, but again, going through that process, calling all those things out. At a high level, would note, per the comment that this would utilize a few different facilities, staff would sort of put together an ad hoc team. Again, without formal dates dedicated, we do have an outline here. A rough timeline would be the month of May. The solicitation would go out, properly post, including in the newspaper, and we utilize communication channels to solicit bids. Within the month of May, we would host a tour, so to speak, so people can come see our buildings. So before they actually submit a bid, they know what they're getting into. We would accept bids by the end of May, and then staff would take a couple of weeks in June. Goal would be by end of June or sometime in July to execute a contract and then update services going from there. So again, really an operational item that does require your formal approval to go forward, getting in front of you so we can start that process again at the start of May.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the fiscal and operational hygiene in this case. So this is good practice. Council, any questions, comments, concerns, motions?
Seeing none, I motion to authorize staff to issue an RFP for cleaning services for the city of Robbinsdale.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no or nay. All right, so be it. And back to the agenda here. Moving on to other business, voucher requests pending approval for disbursement. Any additional commentary there, Chase? No? Okay. Council, any questions, concerns?
I'll make a motion to approve disbursement request for the period ending April 21st, 2026.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no or nay. That is passed. Okay. Administrative reports.
I'll start tonight. I just got a couple for you. I noted this last council meeting too, but we have election judge applications are up on our website. So if people want to serve as an election judge, it is a paid position. So it's $13 an hour. It would be August 11th is the primary and November 3rd is the general. You can choose to work both those, one of those, half a day. So there are some options. There'll be training in June for election judges. So if you want to serve as one, that application is online. You can also come to City Hall, and I have printed applications if you want to fill one out. And any questions, certainly come and ask me. Along that same line, our wards 3 and 4 seats are open this year. And so the candidate filing period starts on May 19th and runs for 2 weeks. So if people have questions about what's involved with that, you can certainly reach out to me or the clerk's office, and we can help answer those and get you the answers you need. And then the other thing I want to note, residents should have received or will receive soon a postcard in the mail about online utility payment system changes. So basically, right now, if you're doing like an online payment or have auto pay, it's done through Invoice Cloud. And on April 28th, that'll change to BSNA Online that folks can use. So they'll have to set up a brand new account to get their information transferred and set up. I think an important thing to note for that one is that if you're currently enrolled on auto pay, you'll have to re-sign up. So your bill now comes out, you don't have to think about it. So if you want to continue that, certainly get on BSNA Online when it goes live on the 28th and sign up. The next bill isn't due until June, and that's when it would auto pull your payment if you set it up. So you've got some time to certainly get in the system and get familiar with it. There's information on our website, and our utility billing team is able to answer questions and help along the way too. So those are my updates for tonight.
Can I ask a question about that? Just for the sake of answering if somebody asks, well, what put us in the position to want to move to BSNA? Like, what's the backstory? And you don't have to give me a big backstory, just be short, but like, why the move?
Mr. Mayor, Council, we're realistically just about 2 years into a process of updating our platform. BSNA is a software that we utilize for a number of things, including utility billing. The move from a version of BSNA we had through a server onto the cloud allowed us to synchronize and gain efficiencies, not just with UB, but a lot of our systems. That includes engineering, thinking in terms of permitting and licensing, by way of through like the building official's office. Comes with a number of other capacities. This also includes some enhanced security and does come with a reduced price for overall operations. So really that combination of things led to this. Again, this process, realistically, we're getting up onto year 2 of this since we executed that. and does utilize us to move forward with achieving all of those goals.
Well, that's great. All of that is a benefit to not only staff but also residents, and so thanks for explaining that. That's fantastic. Okay, Tim, do you got some stuff?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I do have some stuff. Thank you. First of all, I want to offer my thanks to Stefan for coming in tonight. Always the highlight of the year. City has remained active at the legislature this spring. We have conducted some testifying by way of bonding for a new public works facility, testified to local sales tax with the House, potentially, or excuse me, with the Senate, potentially the House later this week, and continue to work with some of our coalitions, including Northwest Suburbs on congregate care, as well as Coalition for Safe and Stable Communities. As was noted, want to share out the Arbor Day celebration again is this Saturday. And as we get into programming, May is always a fun month. On the 2nd, the Historical Society will be celebrating their 100-year anniversary in the current building. Bike rodeo on the 7th of May. I do want to call out as we get into that time of year, the mosquito control activity will be starting up again. Always a visual presence with that. The annual report is posted on the website and will be made available. The water quality is something that we are required to do annually. I just learned that going into 2027, we have to do it twice a year. So we'll continue to go through those processes and post all that information available to the public. Second half of May includes the 14th, the Walk with the Mayor, and then on the 16th, a couple of reasons to get out. The compost giveaway is a part of the pickup for those plants that were discussed earlier, and then the furniture drop-off. That's going to be a new event that we're hosting up at the Public Works facility. So continue to look at city communications for more information on those.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Next, we got Council General Communications. Any general communications? Me, you've been gone for a couple of weeks. Anything?
Nothing tonight.
Whoa. All right. All right.
I'll go real quick, real brief. Hey, we're in the change of seasons. Make sure you say hi to your neighbors, get out and greet people. We got new people that moved into our city as well too, so make sure you say hi.
All right.
Short and sweet.
Fantastic.
Just let people know if I'll be at the Arbor Day celebration on Saturday morning in Manor Park. So hope to see people out there, and it's always a fun time.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. I don't want to look away too soon. Oh, nothing for you. All right. I don't have much either. Just we are. I think the three of us are doing an event this weekend for the Lions at the Wicked Wort for celebrity bartending. So two of you will be together at one point, and I'll be on a different shift. So don't want to break any laws here. Okay. Excellent. Well, with that, enjoy the wonderful weather, and let's see if there's a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no or nay. Meeting adjourned.